Do video games need to change over time? Does every game have to innovate on the previous one? Are games supposed to achieve a constant stream of new highs, each game getting better and better as hardware improves and the dev team becomes bolder? What necessitates change? Sure, you could argue that the driving forces of capitalism likely encourage dev teams to make changes to their style and adapt their games to try to sell it to existing fans as well as new fans. But that's the less fun, perhaps more realistic way to look at things. Yes, video games change due to a multitude of reasons. However, in my opinion, the most fundamental reason for change, from an artistic perspective, is growth. The ability to take your knowledge of something and apply it to a new concept you haven't worked on before is something humanity has been doing since the beginning of time. Well, since the beginning of humanity's time. Humans have managed to harness fundamental principles of the world and through time create things like electricity, all in the name of progress and growth. For the artist, growth is a great way to branch out of your comfort zone. If you try to create the same thing too many times, it inevitably becomes less fun. Once you cooked your 500th burger, the 501st doesn't seem all that exciting compared to your first few. And yes, cooking is an art form, even burgers. In the creation of video games, like many things in today's world, the ideas have become tied to profit, which comes with inherent risks associated with making anything entirely new. When you have a formula that works, why change it? If people love your game for its mechanics or its story, why go around changing that up? What if you lose the game's identity when you do that? What if you tick off tons of old fans and fail to attract new ones? And of course, to investors, trying something new equates to risk, and risk is a surefire way to make them sell out the moment it starts to look like your product might fail. It's a shame, really, that so many art forms are held captive by the grips of investors and the art's ability to move capital. However, for me to sit here on my high horse and act like capitalism has ruined art would be ignoring the entirely real positive effects that capitalism has had on art. Capitalism has forced the gaming industry to innovate, which is not negative at all. The pressure to do better and better is certainly formed by the assumption that this is an industry where creators can make substantial financial gains, an industry that has grown into one of the largest media industries in the world, surpassing film and music, and it did so in roughly 40 to 50 years. Of course, we could get into the bad and good things about capitalism as done for video games, but I think the key takeaway from this point is that there lies an extremely fine balance between making art for art and making art for money. To me, the clearest example of a franchise that simultaneously existed to create art and passion and money is Mario, believe it or not. Mario is a series that is adapted over many years. The games have not only innovated on its original 1985 formula out of creativity, but also for profit. A new Mario game is exciting and profitable. Each game seems to define a generation of kids and brings more people into the world of Nintendo. Beyond fans and gamers, the games themselves have affected the industry as a whole. Super Mario 64 was revolutionary to gaming. Super Mario Bros. Itself and the NES are arguably the reason video games became popular again after the market crashed in 1983. Nintendo single-handedly brought gaming back to the United States, and now almost every household has at least one gaming system. For those of you who don't know, I'm a massive Nintendo fan. I've been playing Mario games since I was a small child. Some of my first experiences with video games were playing Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 3 on my aunt's NES in 2005. I spent a lot of time playing these old games, enjoying every moment of it. Mario is a franchise that has impacted my life in an extremely substantial way. I played it during some of the best and worst years of my life, whether it be as a young kid or going through my parents' divorce. I've stated before that Super Mario Galaxy is my favorite game of all time, and maybe I'll cover it someday, but for now I want to focus on 2D Mario games, as I've been playing them a lot lately for my second channel, The Geek Factor Plays. Shameless plug aside, this video will be part of a trilogy of videos all talking about 2D Mario games. The first, today's video, is about Super Mario Bros. 3 and how it built the foundations on which every future Mario game sits, even beyond the 2D ones. I think Super Mario Bros. 3 marks a turning point for the franchise. It is the most approachable game up to that point, and is one of the most innovative Mario games ever, even to this day. The features of so many Mario games are either copied or rooted from Mario 3, and it's easy to see why. It's a terrific game. It expands on everything the first Mario game set out to do. More levels, more power-ups, more secrets, more story, though it's not really saying much, more challenges, more themes, just more of everything Nintendo set out to do with the original. You might be wondering why I'm choosing to talk about the Super Mario Bros. 3 game rather than the original Super Mario Bros. Game. The original, for everything it does right, is not where the vast majority of Mario games get a lot of their core mechanics or themes. Like, sure, Mario runs and jumps, everyone knows that, But if Super Mario Bros. 3 laid the foundation for other Mario games to build upon, then Super Mario Bros. 1 is more like the ground that the foundation sits on. You don't need me to tell you why Super Mario Bros. 1 is so important to Mario games or gaming as a whole. For a lot of people, Super Mario Bros. Was the first video game they played. It offered a great introduction to gaming and certainly has features that Mario 3 built upon. Mario 1 introduces many key concepts like levels, worlds, power-ups, Bowser. It was a good starting place, so it's easy to see how and why Nintendo managed to expand on that initial project. But Mario 1 feels like a first game. It's good, but it's got some issues. The graphics don't really hold up the best, some glitches can break the game entirely, and I don't think anyone would generally regard Mario 1 as the best Mario game. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great game and a masterpiece in its own right, especially considering its influence on the gaming industry, but when you start asking people about what is the best 2D Mario game, or Mario game in general, Super Mario Bros. 3 was always a contender for first place, and for good reason. It stands the test of time as one of the most accessible and fun Mario games to exist. Super Mario Bros. 3 takes everything the first two Mario games did in Mario 2 in Japan, not so much the US, and expands on them in a meaningful and innovative way. Hi, Future Garrett here. I realize that some people who watch my content may not know the basic history of Mario games and why there's a difference between Mario 2 in Japan and Mario 2 in the US, so I'm going to do like a very, very brief timeline of Super Mario Bros. Games leading up to Mario 3 and a little bit beyond. So forgive me if you already know this information, but I'm trying to help the normies in the audience. Love you guys. I love normies too. Super Mario Bros. Released as a launch title for the NES alongside Duck Hunt in 1985 here in the US. It was a solid game. It featured 8 worlds, each one with 4 levels and fun challenges. There was a ton of potential here. Shortly after this game was developed and released, the 8 or so devs working on Mario 1 began to work on a sequel. The team had plenty of new ideas for levels, so they just kept making them. A pretty common trend for sequels in Nintendo games, funny enough. This led to Super Mario Bros. 2, or as we know it in the United States, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. The Lost Levels is a really hard game. I've been playing it on my gaming channel lately. You'll see what I mean if you go watch that. It's not easy. It expects a lot from players and even trolls players to absurd degrees, hiding blocks in inconvenient places, having warp pipes that send you backwards in the world instead of forwards. It's just really hard. Because of this difficulty, Nintendo of America felt that the US audience was probably too bad at video games and people wouldn't enjoy playing it. Thus we got Super Mario Bros. 2, the US edition. This game is a reskin of a Japanese game known as Doki Doki Panic. This game is very different from the original Super Mario Bros., but its influence on Mario games still exists to this day. The 4 playable characters, Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Peach, are all playable characters in Super Mario 3D World, and they play slightly differently, just like they did back in Mario 2. Mario 3, the game that we're focusing on today, was released in Japan in 1988, and here in North America in 1990. We'll get more into this game later, but just for right now, know it's a pretty big deal. Beyond this came Super Mario Land on the Game Boy in 1989 and Super Mario World in 1991, with Super Mario Land 2 coming out in 1992. It then took Nintendo 14 years to release another 2D Mario game with the introduction of the new Super Mario Bros. Series, a series that was loved at its initial release but slowly looked down on as new games kept coming out over the course of 6 years between 2006 and 2012. But we're not going to focus on that era of Mario games today. Okay, there, that's your rough little timeline with not too much detail. Let's get back to the main focus of the video, Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 always gave me this vibe of grandeur. This is a peak NES game. It takes full advantage of the hardware. This is a peak Mario adventure, and at the time, it was the biggest and most ambitious Mario game out there. I think this is best exemplified by the theme of the game, which is meant to resemble a stage play. The curtain rises and falls at the beginning and the end of the game, the players enter stage right and exit stage left, all of which contribute to the overall feeling of some sort of magical, grand adventure. The story is not completely disconnected from the previous games. It builds off the original Mario story with a fun twist. Instead of invading the Mushroom Kingdom and kidnapping Peach, Bowser has all the Koopalings take over multiple kingdoms throughout the world. While Mario and Luigi are away saving these other kingdoms, the Mushroom Kingdom is defenseless. Bowser uses this as an opportunity to kidnap Princess Peach. This is really great stuff compared to the first. Sure, future Mario games did utilize twists like this, but they seem to do so in ways that feel like a repeat of Mario 3, or just maybe do it a little worse, but that's a point for a later video. Perhaps one of the most important things that Super Mario Bros. 3 builds upon from the first game is power-ups. In the original Super Mario Bros. We had the Magic Mushroom, the Fire Flower, and the Starman. The Magic Mushroom allows Mario to grow in size, thus allowing him to break blocks above his head, as well as take a hit of damage without dying. The Fire Flower allows Mario to shoot fireballs and attack enemies from a distance. Finally, the Starman allows Mario to become invincible to enemies for a short time. These all return in Mario 3 and haven't really changed much since their original outing. Alongside these returning power-ups are Mario 3's new power-ups, which include the Super Leaf, the Frog Suit, the Tanuki Suit, the Hammer Suit, and the P-Wing. Something that I love about all these power-ups is how they complement the core mechanics of Mario. If the player builds up enough momentum, the Super Leaf allows Mario to fly for a short period of time. The Frog Suit allows for much greater mobility when swimming at the cost of mobility on land. The Tanuki Suit allows for flight just like the Super Leaf, but also allows for temporary invincibility when transforming into a statue. The Hammer Suit doesn't really complement Mario's core mechanics in the same way as the others, but it does prevent Mario from sliding, as well as granting him the ability to throw hammers at enemies, which is much better than the Fire Flower in some cases. It can take out things like thwomps and boos, something that the Fire Flower simply can't do. Lastly, the P-Wing is just the Super Leaf with infinite flight for one level or until Mario takes a hit. In essence, these power-ups all affect how Mario moves throughout a level to some capacity, allowing for Mario's core mechanics to be switched up in a meaningful way. That's exactly what power-ups are supposed to do. Having the Super Leaf not only allows for greater ascension, but also careful descension. This is really awesome because it takes Mario's biggest ability, jumping, and gives the player far greater reach. These are all things that future Mario games replicate in some manner. Super Mario World gives us the Cape Feather, allowing for even more flight, which does take some skill to master, and easy descension by holding down the jump button instead of tapping it rapidly like players had to do in Mario 3 with the Super Leaf. Super Mario Bros. 3 sets the standard for what power-ups in Mario games should be. Items that expand on Mario's core mechanics, such as defeating enemies or jumping. This is the sort of thing that all future Mario games should innovate upon. I was actually disappointed at the number of power-ups in Super Mario World. It went down. I felt it would be natural to have at least the same amount of power-ups as Mario 3, but the Yoshis in Super Mario World have their own special abilities depending on the color and what Koopas you eat, so in some ways, it kind of makes up for it. Super Mario Bros. 3 sets the standard for a lot of things in a lot of Mario games moving forward in more areas than just power-ups. Take, for example, world themes. In Super Mario Bros. 1 and the Lost Levels, we saw various themes portrayed, typically grassy land, oceans, snow, and even sky themes. Mario 3 takes these ideas and fleshes them out, increasing the cohesiveness of each world. World 1, Grassland, very creative name I know, sets a standard for future Mario games. Every Mario game up until Mario Wonder kinda follows this trend of grassy lands for its first world theme. Maybe not the Super Mario Land games, they're a little different, but the rest do. And for good reason, it's an easy, digestible theme that attracts both new and old players. Every world beyond this has its own style as well. World 2 is a desert, World 3 is an ocean, World 4 is big stuff, World 5 is sky themed, World 6 is ice themed, etc., etc. A lot of these themes are repeated in future Mario games. The theming of each world makes Mario's adventure feel bigger. Mario is traveling across the entire world, and seeing him in these different themed environments certainly helps that feeling, which is heightened even more by the fact that there are now world maps. In the first couple of Mario games, levels were just separated by a simple black screen displaying the number of lives that Mario had left, as well as the world and the course number of said world on that screen. This sort of led me to feel like Mario's adventure was just on one boring straight path. Couple this with the fact that like each level starts with a castle he just left, it made the journey in the original Mario game feel small. I don't know, I always got the vibe that I wasn't going all too far because there was no real sense of distance with these worlds. Super Mario Bros. 3 fixes a lot of that for me. World maps feel like a natural upgrade to the black screen. They set the tone for all levels within a world and contribute to the feel-good nature of navigating your way from one side of the world to the other. For example, World 1 takes place on a single screen. To my knowledge, it's the only world that takes place on a single screen. I guess if you count the Warp World, maybe not, I don't know. The player starts on the top left side of the screen with the castle you're heading towards in the bottom right. There are clear paths that the player can take, including a shortcut that is locked away from the time being. On this path, there are some optional routes and little bonuses. Although levels 3 and 4 can be skipped entirely if you wish to make a mad dash for the end of the world, in doing so you miss out on the opportunity to gain power-ups and visit a Toad House, as well as other intriguing little secrets. That little shortcut gets unlocked by clearing up the first fortress. This is useful because it allows players to skip the first few levels if they get a game over. World 1 does a particularly good job of setting up the rest of the game. It feels like each level explores a mechanic that will come up again later. World 1 itself is an introduction to how worlds worked. As I mentioned, it's the only world to take place on a single screen. World 1 is simple and easy to understand. You move from one corner to the opposite corner. It's very simple. In World 2, you move from the left side of the kingdom across to the right across two different screens. Other worlds change it up, such as World 4 having the player start in the right and move to the left, or World 5 which has you start in the ground and then finish up in the sky. Some of the world themes here become series staples for Mario games to come. Desert, sky, water, grasslands, and the final lava fire world are all over modern Mario games these days. Another key feature, the bosses of Super Mario Bros. 3 have become staples within the Mario franchise. Boom Boom and the Koopalings are some of the most iconic Mario bosses, which is sad because they kinda suck in 90% of the games they're in. Fighting these bosses again in Mario 3 while getting footage just felt kinda boring, and that's not really Mario 3's fault, it's the fault of the games for reusing the same bosses over and over and over again to the point where they just feel mundane. The first few times you fight Boom Boom, it's actually kind of a lot of fun. As a kid, he actually gave me trouble. Many of my runs were ruined by the fortress in Boom Boom. I know Boom Boom is memed hard on today, but for the third Mario game, I think he was a good mid-level boss. He's got a small variety of attacks that he switches up sometimes, and the layout of the room can sometimes change and meaningfully impact the fight, kind of. The Koopalings, of course, are much trickier with distinct themes and more unique attack patterns. I know that some of the Koopalings do repeat their own attack patterns, such as Larry and Morton sharing attacks, which isn't the best, but they change out the layout of the boss room to make up for that sort of thing, which I think is fine. Super Mario World is very guilty of this as well, with Ludwig being its only unique boss fight. Super Mario World takes the idea of world themes and expands on it by giving us one cohesive and connected world. It takes the idea of secret exits and secret stages and turns the dial up to 11. There are 2 entirely secret worlds in Super Mario World. Super Mario Bros. 3 did have a couple secret exits which used warp whistles to speed up the game for players who were crafty enough to find them, but Super Mario World expands on that greatly. With the addition of an entire world, players can only escape via secret exits. Actually, there are 2 worlds that do this. Star Road, the first secret world, opens up another secret world, which has really challenging levels and has a really cool reward for completion that I will not spoil. I know the game is literally 30 years old, who cares? I know, but I still don't want to spoil it. When I think about which Mario games are the most monumental for the series, Super Mario Bros. 3 really is that game. From the start, it presents itself as a bolder and more exciting Mario game than those before it. The innovations put forth by Mario 3 have continued to inspire other Mario games even today. The curtain rises, revealing Mario and Luigi hopping around having a blast before opening straight into the first world. Players journey across 8 different worlds, each with its own immersive theme, and finally, you confront Bowser after defeating his military and all other kingdoms around the world. As you dodge and weave your way past Bowser, he finally crashes down to the floor of his castle, falling into the depths below. You've won. You reunite with Peach and the day is saved. Bowser feels like a real threat this time. The whole game you've been fighting his underlings, but now you're fighting the real thing. In the original Mario, you fought copycats of Bowser that looked just like him, and the fight evolves a little bit in difficulty, but Mario 3's setup is much more impactful, and that the final fight with Bowser feels much more, well, final. This is what it's all been leading up to. Bowser watches a single man and his goofy-ass brother rampage through their army across 7 kingdoms, all the way to him. Even when facing a man who single-handedly destroyed his kingdom and destroyed his prospects for military conquest, Bowser doesn't flinch. He's ready to take down Mario without hesitation, yet the player perseveres. This might just be me, but Bowser always felt genuinely threatening in these older games. Super Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3 probably have the best Bowser fights simply because of their presentation and theme. Getting to him is challenging enough, but it gets worse when you realize that Bowser isn't afraid of Mario, even after seeing what Mario is capable of. Either that or Bowser really is just that narcissistic and doesn't value his people. Either way, Bowser comes off as very threatening, especially for a kid's game if you stop to think about it for more than 2 seconds. Super Mario Bros. 3 felt like a necessary change to the Mario formula. The core functionality of Mario's running and jumping is still there, but it's built upon in meaningful and new ways. It's easy to imagine a world where the developers didn't see a need to improve with Mario 3, but rather just make another collection of trickier levels with maybe a couple of sprinkles of new ideas thrown in, like they did with Mario 2. But it's clear that Miyamoto and the team wanted something bigger and more ambitious with Mario's 3rd game. On one hand, it's clear to me that this change was made in part to sell more copies of the game. It's unlikely that people would pay full price for a game that they've basically already played twice. On the other hand, this small, passionate team of about 20 to 30 people, according to Super Mario Wiki, don't at me if I'm wrong, clearly approached Mario 3 with more than a monetary incentive. They had an artistic drive to make the game more approachable, bigger in every way, and above all else, more fun. For a long time after Mario 3, it felt like Mario games were just coming out because Nintendo thought they were easy cash cows. From 2006 to 2013, it felt like we were getting a major Mario game almost every single year. Hell, we saw 2 games in the same year in 2012, and most of these games, particularly the 2D games, did not innovate in meaningful ways as previous Mario games did. If Super Mario Bros. 3 was the foundation on which to build new Mario games on top of, the Nintendo team left that foundation there and forgot the house. They just kept slapping random shit on the foundation, occasionally putting up a wall here or there. That is to say, they didn't take what was given to them with Mario 3 and change it or innovate beyond it. They in fact took what Mario World did and copied that as well in many respects. Change is necessary. We've seen what happens to a team of talented developers is forced to change and innovate. They do a good job. Change is good. It forces us to step beyond our comfort zones and vices to truly grow. Why should art be any different? Is art not a reflection of one's own ideas presented unto the world? Should your art not reflect that growth? Sometimes it's easy to stay in our comfort zones. It's easy to stay in the same job, the same school, hang out with the same people, adhere to the same ideologies, and never look beyond the very fragile echo chamber that we've become complacent in. But once you begin to look beyond that, once you begin to let go of your preconceived notions of art, of anything really, that's when you realize there was really never anything to hold on to in the first place. You're an infinite expanse of ideas and creativity. You are not a small collection of ideas. You are not a brain floating in a bag of skin. You're all of it. The art you produce isn't the paint on a canvas. That's you. The music you make isn't the notes to be critiqued, but an extension of yourself that you let the world partake in. Of course, this necessitates a deeper philosophical discussion, but on a practical level, the death of art comes when an artist becomes too comfortable with what they are doing. My art is making YouTube videos. Before making silly Minecraft videos, I spent years trying to find my way in music and or politics. I had become complacent in what I was doing. Then I took a risk, wrote a script, edited a video, and at the time of writing the script, that video has now 1 million views and many comments and likes. And it's about a game that I am very passionate about and I've been playing since I was a kid. Minecraft, we all know it. I'm sorry, it's Minecraft. Yeah, it's Minecraft, whatever, and moving on. We see this all the time in game development. Hell, we see this all the time in art in general. This is why the next video in this trilogy have loosely tied together ideas about the importance of art, self-expression, and change, all told through the weird vehicle of silly Mario games, is about the death of art. Where does art go to die? What causes something to lose all that charm and creativity that once characterized it? What happens when your creation becomes more of a contractual obligation rather than something you enjoy making? I feel a little silly that I'm using Mario games as a vehicle to express a desire to see more people express their art in an economic landscape that is increasingly more corporate, but it feels necessary. I know I didn't go into super deep detail with every enemy, level, item, and feature of Super Mario Bros. 3, but I don't think I needed to. That's not the point of this. Everything from world themes to power-ups to the grand adventure itself, Mario 3 is a truly wonderful game, a nearly perfect game to many people. And if you haven't played this game before, I recommend playing it on Nintendo Switch Online. If you don't have that, well, I won't encourage you to download illegal ROMs of the game, but that is something you are capable of doing. You shouldn't do it, but you can. If you made it this far into the video, you're probably thinking, why the hell is this guy talking about art and the philosophy of art in his Super Mario Bros. 3 video? Then I'm sorry, I kind of tricked you into it, didn't I? I didn't really mean to, I'm just more or less word vomiting onto a Google Doc, but I think the overall point still stands. Mario 3 innovated and set up the future for what Mario games became, and in my next video we'll talk about how the franchise failed to move beyond that. What other games have fallen into a similar trap? How can artists and game devs climb out of that wicked rut of complacency and repetition? For now, in recent years, I've found that one Mario game in particular gets a bad rap. There's one game that people tend to point to when they say, this is everything Mario shouldn't be. And that game is, of course, New Super Mario Bros. U. Though it was widely praised at its initial release, the game has since slowly become more and more disliked since it came out. Most of these complaints can be chalked up to, it's bland, and to coin a term from Scott the Woz, it's just another Mario game. And yeah, this is true, to various extents. It's very been there, done that, something you'll likely hear me say multiple times through this video. There isn't much in this game that I feel I don't get from any other Mario game, oftentimes in a more exciting way. So today we're taking a look back to the year 2012 at one of Nintendo's most disliked Mario games. New Super Mario Bros. U feels like the most complete of the New Super Mario Bros. Series. It's got a big connected world, HD graphics, tons of side modes, and a DLC in the form of New Super Luigi U. So that's the game I want to focus on. There are other games in the New Super Mario Bros. Franchise, but given how much time I've spent with this game, it feels like the one I can most accurately assess. You see, I skipped the Wii U era entirely, mainly because my mother could not fathom what a Wii U was. I recall asking her if we could save up for the Wii U, and I'm pretty sure she literally said, "Don't we already have a Wii?" Even recently, I visited home and busted out my Wii U. She thought it was just another controller. We are 12 years from the launch of the Wii U, and people still have no idea what this thing is or that it even existed. And I'm not trying to make fun of my mom or anything, I just find that story funny. She reacted in the way that I exactly expected her to, and I just thought it was a funny little relatable story. So needless to say, I missed out on a ton of cool games. I missed out on Mario Kart 8, Wind Waker HD, Nintendo Land, Super Mario 3D World, Twilight Princess HD, and of course, New Super Mario Bros. U. And because of this, I always felt like I kind of missed out on something special within the Nintendo community. If you ask people who were Wii U owners during its peak, most of them expressed enjoying some sense of community. The Wii U's player base was small, and therefore the community was small, which I think brought people together. Don't get me wrong, a lot of bad things happened during this era, like a massive lack of games and lack of any hope for the future, but hey, at least they had a little sense of community going for themselves. I always wanted a Wii U, but by the time I was in high school making my own money, I was happy with my PS4, until my brother took it from me when he moved out, and then my PS3. My interest for Nintendo began to wane. Then the Switch came out, and my love for Nintendo was reignited, and according to my doctors, I have never developed into a sane adult because of that. Regardless, the Switch brought over tons of Wii U games, and one of them being New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. The first 2D Mario game on the Switch was a port of a Wii U game. How fun. I first played New Super Mario Bros. U shortly after the Deluxe Edition released in January of 2019, during my senior year of high school, and I had a ton of fun with the game at the time. I mostly played by myself. I didn't really have friends who were into Mario like I was, and it didn't really appeal to like everybody like Mario Kart did, so when I would plop down to play New Super Mario Bros. U, you can imagine my shock when nobody came to play with me. Like, what do you mean you don't want to play a 10-year-old Mario game that looks generic as hell? You know, it's fun, trust me. But enough beating around the bush. What does New Super Mario Bros. U do right, and what does it do wrong? To return to a point from my previous video, does it fail to grow beyond the likes of the original Mario games, or does it bring something truly unique to the table? We'll start somewhere simple. Presentation. This is the first 2D Mario game in HD. Hell, the first Mario game in HD, and it looks fine. Like, it's serviceable, but it's certainly not what I would have pictured when somebody says Mario in HD. I figured a new 3D Mario game would be the big title to show off the graphic capabilities of the Wii U, but unfortunately, we wouldn't get that game until 2013, and Super Mario 3D World it's a fine game. The locales and themes here aren't anything too special, for the most part. We of course start in the grassy lands before moving into some other generic Mario themes, but these almost feel a little too generic. Don't worry though, there's a big difference between the snow world in New Super Mario Bros. Wii and New Super Mario Bros. U. In this game, you enter the world at night this time. Woohoo, wow, it's dark instead of light, even though you can see things just as fine as last time. To be fair, there are actually a couple of really stunning parts of Mario U that tend to stand out thematically. For example, a couple levels in World 7 are more orange themed to depict a sunset, and there's even a Van Gogh inspired level. These levels make me think, wow, why doesn't the rest of the game look like this? Overall, the game just looks like a better version of New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It doesn't have much to say for itself other than that. It lacks an identity. It feels very much been there, done that. And I think that this feeling is only present because there are 3 other 2D Mario games in the exact same style. It almost never changes. Tell me, did you realize you were actually watching New Super Mario Bros. Wii just now? Well, you were. I just emulated it in 1080p. That's it. You're just watching Mario Wii. So many times while playing this game, I felt like the devs wanted to push closer and closer to that creative line, but it seemed as though there was an omnipresent force stopping them from doing so, lest this game be seen as too different from another Mario game. The fans want Mario. Mario is cute. Mario is simple. Mario is fun. That's what matters the most, the fun. Innovating on the story and themes should be pushed aside for the sake of fun. Any creative ideas or ways to innovate be damned. Change is scary and people don't like it when things get hard. However, graphical design isn't the only part of Mario's presentation. Sound design, cinematography, what little there is, and animation all play into the player's experience. Musically, New Super Mario Bros. U does one thing that I really enjoy. Otherwise, it's all generic, but it does one thing that I really, really enjoy. The overworld music is the same track that just switches themes as you travel from world to world. When you start your adventure, it's a fairly basic, bubbly, happy Mario theme with a light acoustic guitar, light percussion, and some MIDI woodwind sound instruments. It's very basic, but it plays this melody over and over. As you move from World 1 to World 2, the music continues to play seamlessly into a new desert theme, featuring a sitar-like instrument and some typically used desert-sounding instruments from other Mario games. This is really neat. This applies to all of the worlds. It does get a little old hearing the same melody over and over. However, I think I can forgive it because it helps to bring about this feeling of one big cohesive experience. Speaking of which, in New Super Mario Bros. U, the world map is one singular area. Gone are the days of load times between worlds. Each one is now seamlessly connected to the other. Surprisingly, food acts as a theme throughout the game. You start in Acorn Plains and then travel to Layer Cake Desert. There's a soda jungle, etc., etc. There's a theme here, and it feels very well connected. However, I'd argue they don't push into the food aesthetic enough. This isn't like Sweet Mystery Galaxy from Galaxy 2, where the theme really shines through. It's just subtly here. And I think that I could appreciate it if it felt more intentional, if it were subtle on purpose, but it just doesn't feel that way to me. It feels like the devs wanted to lean harder into the theme, but for whatever reason, were told no. Yet again, I cannot shake this feeling that the devs want so desperately to innovate beyond, that they want to do more and take every inch they are given. Looking back at the previous New Super Mario Bros. Games, it's easy to see why. They've done these same generic themes 3 times in a row, and now they're doing it for a 4th time. This has to be getting old for them. When the first New Super Mario Bros. Game came out in 2006, the art style was refreshing. It was the epitome of Mario in the modern day, and New Super Mario Bros. Wii continued that theme on the home consoles. At this point, I think it would be reasonable for any dev team to say, hey, you know what? Let's branch out and try some other themes, but nope. New Super Mario Bros. 2 and U are just the same stuff with lackluster exceptions here and there. From an artistic perspective, I can understand the logic of wanting to promote the fun and excitement that consumers get when you sprinkle old games with bits of new and interesting things. But when a franchise has done this for the past 3 games for the past 6 years, it doesn't really work anymore. The magic fades, it feels lazy. You can't expect people to get excited about the snow theme being at nighttime when the rest of the game looks generic as hell. Who the hell is gonna go, oh thank god the snow world is at night, I wasn't gonna fucking buy this game until then. The story isn't anything different either. The big twist this time is that Bowser doesn't kidnap Peach, he instead holds her hostage in her own house. What a twist. The story is presented to us in a way that feels very similar to New Super Mario Bros. Wii. That could be said for most of this game, really. It's Super Mario Bros. Wii, but with a twist. And not a particularly clever twist, might I add. I can see what the devs are trying to go for here, but it comes off as been there, done that. The worst part of this is that I can't really blame the game itself. I'd then have to blame all the games in the series for not trying to innovate beyond the basic stories. Again, I get that this is Nintendo's winning formula. I get that it's safer to stick with it. To be fair, the original New Super Mario Bros. Game saw Bowser Jr. as more of a main villain. We fight him at every castle, but by the time we get to New Super Mario Bros. U, we're using Boom Booms and Koopalings, enemies we've fought before. This game feels very much like a marriage of Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and New Super Mario Bros. A throuple, if you will. It's a marriage that I don't think works too well in the way of innovation or creation of anything unique. I can understand drawing inspiration from these games, but again, that isn't what this feels like. It feels like the team had this cool idea and just couldn't or didn't take it further. The similarities to the past games don't stop at themes though, it's built into the game. Of course, it's part of the Mario franchise. There are going to be similarities. I would be mad if a Mario game didn't feel like a Mario game. However, some of the similarities in the mechanics and the level design just feel overdone and uninspired. As mentioned earlier, Boom Boom is back for the first 6 towers of the game, and it's just Boom Boom again. Same moves as Mario 3. Nothing really changes except he's like bigger in one of the worlds. World 6 second tower and World 7 tower feature different bosses in the towers, thank god, that being Sumo Bro and Kamek respectively. I understand that these games are made for children, but I don't think that that's a valid excuse to not try something different. For example, New Super Mario Bros. On the DS has much more unique boss fights. You'd be hard pressed to tell me it's not as much of a kid's game as Mario U. I don't follow that line of thinking. Even the original Mario games were kids' games, and they innovated upon each other. I understand nostalgia bait, and I get that it works, but you cannot continually rely on it to sell a game. All of this leads to a game that feels soulless, like it has no identity. It is too shackled by the past to say anything truly, well, new. It fails to move beyond the glory days of Mario 3 and Mario World while being simultaneously tied down by the themes of New Super Mario Bros. What does this game say that other Mario games don't? Is there anything I can get out of this game that I couldn't get out of playing any other New Super Mario Bros. Games? Well, I guess Nabbit, but he's only a playable character in the deluxe re-release or in Luigi U. Nabbit is maybe one of the coolest additions to the game, but again, Nabbit doesn't feel like an original idea. Chasing him down on a level doesn't feel all that different from carrying a toad. It's an evolution of the carry this toad to the flag idea from Super Mario Bros. Wii. It's a reason we replay some stages and get a little extra challenge. But again, we've been there, done that. This isn't really anything new. This raises the question I posed in my previous video. Do video games actually need to change? Is change a necessary requirement of a good game? I think the answer here is pretty obvious. No. You don't have to change anything to make good art. In fact, in some art forms, creating the same thing over and over is generally seen as good. Take cooking, for example. Cooking a dish the same way is how people establish and pass down tradition. Changing that up runs the risk of people no longer being a fan of that dish, or may lead to inconsistent experiences among patrons. However, I would be hard-pressed to say that a chef should keep the recipes the same forever. I imagine the chef would get bored after a while, the same way a painter would get bored of painting the same landscape the same way. In gaming, I think a clear example of this is the transition from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. These two games are wildly different, get it? Breath of the Wild came out just after Skyward Sword, not counting Link Between Worlds. For a while, 3D Zelda console games had followed a pretty rigid path. Each game, while different thematically and even mechanically, always followed the principle of linear dungeons and obtaining items in those dungeons to progress in that dungeon and in the world at large. By the time we hit Skyward Sword, any semblance of non-linearity is gone. The game has a story to tell and you are going to follow it. A far cry from the motives of the original Zelda game in 1986. Breath of the Wild is a return to that original motive and style. It is clear from how divisive Skyward Sword was that Zelda needed to innovate while, ironically, going back to its roots. Breath of the Wild lets you truly do anything at whatever pace you want. You have a short tutorial section, but after you beat that, you're free to go anywhere at any time. This is innovation. Instead of focusing on a grabbing, rich story with complex dungeons, there's a focus on vibe and exploration. Breath of the Wild wants you to be okay with just existing. It wants you to sit every once in a while and take a breath, to observe the world that you're in. Time has passed. The past is gone. The future is uncertain. Will you beat Ganon? When will Ganon come to full power again? All there is the now. You are here in this moment, observing a world built by a very talented and passionate team. But perhaps that analysis of Breath of the Wild should be saved for a future video. In Mario, you rarely vibe or take time to appreciate the world you're in. The best example of this I can maybe think is like Mario Galaxy. There are moments in Mario Galaxy where the game asks you just to observe and to think. Listen to the music, get a feel for a grand adventure you're on. Some levels are epic, some are slow. Sometimes the orchestra is grand and bursting with rich instrumentation and loud melodies to make you feel like you're having the time of your life, and others are calm, reflective. They ask you to sit for a moment, to feel something. Feel the now. I ask you, was there every time in New Super Mario Bros. U where you went, wow, this is really something special. This is art. This is something to be proud of. I sure didn't, but that's not the point of 2D Mario games. And I'm not saying 2D Mario games should be reflective or deep. Mario Galaxy is an example of a game that is able to capture a wide range of emotions. There are highs, there are lows. 2D Mario games are pretty much just all highs. It's go, go, go at every turn. It is happily, bubbly music in every moment. Even eerie stages like ghost houses don't feel as dangerous as they once did in Super Mario World. And trust me, I've played a lot more Mario World than I have of Mario U. The ghost houses are more eerie in that game, I promise. The point I'm trying to convey here is that Mario U is very static in its themes. I don't feel anything when I play it. However, I have to remind myself that a 10-year-old me was over the moon when I first beat Super Mario Bros. Wii. And that game is equally as derivative as Mario U is, so maybe I'm not the one who is meant to feel something. Children are. I don't pick up Mario games to feel something, I do it to play Mario. And that's the only real ground to judge this game on as an art form. Does it feel like a Mario game? Yes. it does, and it's fantastic. While New Super Mario Bros. U doesn't add anything particularly new to the series, the original New Super Mario Bros. Did radically change up controls in 2D games. Wall jumps, triple jumps, ground pounds, and all meaningfully change how the player is able to approach challenges. It also gives the devs more room to design creative challenges. Speaking of which, another innovation brought to the series is Star Coins. These are neat collectibles that act as a currency in the original New Super Mario Bros. And in New Super Mario Bros. 2. They can be used to unlock secret paths or toad houses to award a player with 1-ups or power-ups. In the console versions of the game, they don't really offer much. New Super Mario Bros. Wii allows you to use them to unlock short movies that you could pull off neat tricks, as well as unlock stages in the Secret World 9. I'm pretty sure in Mario U, they are only used for the Secret World Superstar Road. That's it. It's weird to me that the DS games are the only ones to use the full potential of these collectibles. Mario Wii does a decent job at it, allowing for some secret cutscenes and little hints to be unlocked at Peach's Castle, but Mario U just makes them a requirement for the special world. That's it. Regardless, having collectibles is nice. They give players a reason to replay stages and find all the little hidden goodies. Most satisfyingly utilize Mario's moveset. Mario feels fantastic to control in all of these games. By the time we hit Mario U, it feels like the devs have nailed down what it should feel like to control Mario. It just feels good to pull off a triple jump or do a lot of consecutive wall jumps. The levels themselves aren't too challenging for me at this point, and I found a lot of them to be overall forgettable. Nothing stuck out to me like some of the levels did from Mario World or Mario 3, and that's a shame because Super Mario Bros. U shows off a lot of really neat ideas. However, I can't say if it is particularly unique or difficult for me. Perhaps I am too good at a game meant for kids. So if the main story isn't all too memorable for me, what about the extras? Mario U offers quite a bit of content outside the main game, and I think that's an overall positive. Coin Battle is back and it's as fun as ever. Multiple players duke it out so you can get the most coins. Pretty simple fun. You can play on a multitude of courses from the game, as well as custom coin courses just for this mode. Pretty neat. There are also some single player challenge stages where the players must earn bronze, silver, or gold medals depending on how well they perform on these challenges. Some are time based, some are coin challenges, and some are even special challenges. Boost Rush is new to Mario U. Players can choose from a collection of courses ranging from easy to superstar, and they can play levels where getting coins makes the screen move faster and faster. The goal is to get to the end as fast as possible, but the more coins you get, the more challenging it can be to keep up. These are fun little distractions from the main game, just something to do when your buddies are over and you have nothing better to do with your time. However, none of these little side modes come close to comparing it to one of the greatest parts of Mario U. The part where Mario isn't even in it. Super Luigi U is by far my favorite new Super Mario Bros. Game. Super Luigi U is a remix of the entire game with shorter but much more challenging levels. Players only have 100 seconds to beat each course, meaning you'll be rushing through the game to try to hit the end. This makes obtaining things like star coins and secret exits much more challenging and rewarding because the player is on a time crunch. However, Nintendo didn't just remake every course, they also redid the physics. In Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, players can play as Luigi. Luigi can jump higher than Mario, but he also slips a little more than Mario does, making a playthrough as Luigi challenging but rewarding if one is skilled enough. Nintendo decided that for Luigi U, Luigi's old physics should come back, meaning players now have an increased jump height compared to Mario U, but slip a ton. This is the real challenge. While most players will be used to the physics of New Super Mario Bros., getting the hang of New Super Luigi U is much harder. Luigi is difficult to control here. It's harder to land on smaller platforms. Sometimes you just slide into enemies when you don't mean to. All this is complemented by the difficulty of each stage. Especially towards the later stages, I found it harder and harder to keep going. Some stages get particularly hard, so much so that I didn't even bother with all the star coins. Whatever is in the special world, I don't need to see it, I've had enough. I will say, however, that beating Luigi U feels like something I've earned. It's not something everyone can say they've done. Like how most Mario fans will likely never say they've beat the Lost Levels, it's just damn difficult. But if you're stubborn enough, you can find where the one-up tricks are possible and get tons of lives fast. A really good mid-game spot I found to frequently fill up my lives is the World 5 Ghost House. There's a hidden Starman power-up and you can use it to get a mad dash toward the end of the level where there are tons of boos. I use them to just get a decent amount of lives. Do this a few times and you'll have a nice reserve of lives for you. This course is the reason I got through Luigi U with no continues. I came damn close to getting a game over a couple times, but those extra lives really helped. If Luigi U is too hard, There are a couple things that you can do to make it easier. The first thing you can do is play as Nabbit. Nabbit is playable here, as well as in Mario U in the Deluxe Edition. Nabbit doesn't take any damage from enemies, however he can't use any power-ups. The only way to die as Nabbit is to fall into a hole or get pushed off screen in an auto-scroller. Playing as Nabbit in the Deluxe Edition at least gives you 100 additional seconds on each stage with both Mario U and Luigi U. When a level is completed as Nabbit, the level on the world map will have a purple color instead of blue, signifying that you're a wuss and you need Nabbit. If you find Nabbit to be a little too easy, then Toadette is a great midpoint. Toadette also adds 100 seconds to each level, however she can use power-ups and still be hurt by enemies. Toadette is only in the Deluxe Edition of the game, and she has her own exclusive power-up, the Super Crown. This allows her to transform into Princess Peach for some godforsaken reason. As Peach, the player can glide and jump just like the Acorn power-up. However, if you fall into a hole, Peach will automatically bounce out once to save you. If you fall into the same hole twice, well, you should have learned your lesson. Toadette really alleviates some of the difficulty of Luigi U. If you're having trouble finding a secret exit on a stage because the timer is just too short, I don't think there's really any shame in using Toadette to get a few extra seconds to find it. Hell, it's less cheating than looking it up on YouTube. Toadette can make for a much more relaxing experience when playing Luigi U, while still allowing you to have all the same challenges in terms of parkour. Now, do I use Toadette in my main playthrough Luigi U? No. I used her a couple times when playing co-op because the extra time is very much appreciated when you have multiple players. Outside of that, no, I'm insane. I want to be mad at the game. And I was. I got very mad a couple times. In all seriousness, I found the challenge of Luigi U to be refreshing. While the story isn't changed and the world map is the same, there's a ton of charm added to these stages and it has a clear identity. There is a hidden Luigi in every level. Luigi U isn't really like any other Mario game. It knows exactly what it is and it does a damn good job of doing it. In terms of a unique identity, it puts Mario U to shame. While many levels in Mario U felt like filler levels just to get you from point A to point B, levels in Luigi U each feel like finely crafted and tested for optimal amounts of difficulty, fun, and most important of all, more difficulty. Like I said earlier, beating Luigi U was far more satisfying for me than beating Mario U. I can imagine an alternative universe where my mom did actually get me a Wii U and Mario U was the hot game. I imagine Luigi U would have seemed like this foreboding presence, daring me to just try the challenge. I imagine I would have picked it up a few times only to rage quit and never touch it again, so I'm happy I got to experience Luigi U as an adult. By the time I got the game in 2019, my skills as a Mario player had gotten pretty good, so to have a nice kick in the dirt when playing Luigi U was refreshing and allows me to push my skills even further. It is for these reasons that I feel a need to defend New Super Mario Bros. U. As the game has gotten older, I've seen more and more people express that the game isn't good or is downright bad, and I feel that this is an unjustified claim. Nintendo wouldn't make a bad 2D Mario game, it just doesn't exist. However, I can see why Mario U gets a lot of the heat. If Mario U wasn't the fourth game in a bloated series, then I think people would sing its praises a lot louder. To be clear, I'm not saying the game is without fault. It is bland and repetitive. It is unoriginal and lacks a clear identity. Nonetheless, is it still a solid Mario game? Yes, especially with Luigi U there to bring it up. I spent a lot of time in this video saying that it feels like the devs wanted to do more with this game than they got to do, and Luigi U feels like proof of that. To celebrate Luigi, the team just made some of the best and challenging Mario levels to ever exist, and it's great. Where Mario U lacks difficulty, Luigi U is there as a counterpart to make it a complete package. Something I will criticize Super Mario Wonder for in my next video is its lack of difficult challenges. This is one of the few areas where I firmly believe Mario U and Luigi U have it beat. My original thesis for this video was that Mario U is an example of the death of art, where creativity goes to die, when profit transcends the desire to create something interesting, and we are left with a hollow husk of a vision that could have been something more. However, as I replayed Luigi U for footage, and as I beat both games for the sake of this essay, I realized there is much more in the way of creativity here than I initially thought. While it lacks a distinct identity, it is, regardless, a cohesive Mario experience, and maybe that's all it was ever meant to be. I think it's important to remember the intention of an art piece when critiquing it or praising it. What did it set out to do? In this case, it was meant to be a simple, standard Mario romp that appealed to the most gamers, to sell a new system. Of course, we know it failed to do so. The Wii U's story is tragic. Although I do think the game is good, there's a reason it took Nintendo 11 years to develop their next 2D Mario. It was clear that something had to change. That era of Nintendo is gone now. New Super Mario Bros. Is a thing of the past, and I think we're all happy for it. Change is good. No matter how frightening it may be, changing is something that we cannot avoid. There was no way Nintendo would keep Mario games the same forever. It was only a matter of time before they switched things up again like they did with Zelda or other 3D Mario games. They've got some crazy talented devs who want to make some really beautiful art. I think the reason people were so sick of New Super Mario Bros. Style is because they know Nintendo is capable of more. As I said, in 2012 when this game came out, everyone looked at the Van Gogh inspired level and thought, why isn't every level like this one? And yeah, that's a fair point. Why isn't every level filled with much creativity and identity? Mario Wonder proves that no matter how crazy or wacky the idea may be, there's a way to fit it into a Mario game. The final video in our trilogy will be about the rebirth of art, how Super Mario Bros. Wonder reimagines Mario down to its core and mechanics. I think it'll be a fun video. If there's one thing I want you to take from this video though, it's that Mario U isn't a bad game. It's just one that didn't get to see its full creative potential, likely because the higher-ups at Nintendo decided that a basic, bland, generic art style is what fits Mario best. We know now that this isn't the case. We've always known that. Mario Galaxy, Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Land, and countless other games stretch the possibilities of themes for Mario games. And that's awesome. I'm happy Nintendo went back to their creative roots with Mario Wonder. However, I think I'll always have a piece of me that feels nostalgic for this admittedly bland and generic era of Mario games. While it may not be the best era of Mario games, it is one that I think many people will remember fondly. If there was ever a game as influential to my childhood as Mario, I have yet to find it. Maybe Dark Cloud, but that's a video for a different day. Mario games have been a constant for me, whether it be playing Mario 1 or Mario 3 on my aunt's NES back in like 2005, or Mario Galaxy on the Wii in a dark closet with my brother, just in the dark, which in hindsight was a weird thing for us to do, but you know, kids will be kids. Mario games have always been there for me. The Wii cemented my love for Mario games and Nintendo as a whole. My family didn't really get one until around 2010, so we were a little bit late to the party, but the Wii, regardless, was a big part of my childhood. Who could forget bowling on Wii Sports and then, throwing the ball into the crowd, or making your very first Mii with your family and friends? The games of this era are something really special to me. However, as I got older, my love for Nintendo and for Mario took a back seat. Not having a Wii U sort of really killed my enjoyment of Nintendo, although I would emulate some older games, like on the SNES or NES from time to time. It wasn't until the Switch came out, and by extension Mario Odyssey, that my love for Mario games would come back in full swing. During the first year of the Switch's life, I was buying every single major first-party Nintendo game that I could get my hands on, as well as some pretty reputable third-party ones. Games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey captivated me and took up much of my free time during the latter years of high school. It's a time period that I look back on fondly, a time when I can remember the friendships I had, the entirely different world I was in, all of it. I'm thousands of miles away from my hometown, and yet I still find time to play Mario games. So when I saw the reveal trailer for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, expect me to call it Mario Wonder from here on out, you can imagine my excitement. The first new 2D Mario game in 11 years. This had to be great. Going into Mario Wonder, I had pretty high expectations. I watched very few trailers and tried my best to stay away from any spoilers. I wanted to relive that magic I felt as a kid playing New Super Mario Bros. Wii or Mario Galaxy for the first time. Of course, nothing can perfectly replicate that childhood magic. However, some things can create a new sense of wonder, get it, and enjoyment. For example, in other genres of games like survival sandboxes, Vintage Story provided me with a reasonable change of pace compared to Minecraft. While it will never live up to Minecraft and how influential it was on my childhood, it does provide a reasonable change of pace and offer a new experience that is really easy to get into. I think Mario Wonder is the quintessential Mario game. It has that classic wacky Nintendo charm, all while actually innovating above and beyond the past games. It takes some of the core mechanics in Mario and either spins them on their head or throws them out entirely, and I think it should be praised for that. Mario Wonder is to 2D games what Breath of the Wild was to 3D Zelda games, a complete transformation. Mario Wonder revolutionizes how we think about 2D Mario adventures and what they can look like. When I think about Mario games, I can't help but think about how exciting it would be to be playing them for the first time again as a kid. I recall how excited I was playing Mario Galaxy the first time. It changed my life. Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2 got me through some genuinely tough times. I like to think that there are kids out there right now who are experiencing Mario Wonder and falling in love with Nintendo the same way I did over a decade and a half ago with the Wii. I want to take today's video to explain why I believe Mario Wonder will cement itself as a modern classic and go on to be remembered fondly in the minds of so many people across many years. As the final act on my trilogy of 2D Mario games and the nature of art, I think it would be wise to wrap up the series and cover all my bases to make sure that I really nail down my exact thoughts on just how important Mario is for gaming, myself, and many others. But I also want to focus on why artistic drive and creativity is so important to society overall, and how we should appreciate art and the artists just a bit more. So once again, let's overthink video games and talk about the importance of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Mario Wonder is the first 2D Mario game to take us outside of the Mushroom Kingdom since Super Mario Land. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm sure some nerd, love ya, in the comments will correct me. This game takes place in the Flower Kingdom, a kingdom just bordering the Mushroom Kingdom. In the opening scene of the game, we actually see the Mushroom Kingdom in the background of the level on the left side. It's a tiny detail that I missed on my first playthrough, and I didn't really notice it until I played the game a second time. This new setting affords us totally unique, well, mostly unique themes for each world. Sure, we have the basic grasslands and snow and deserts, but they all look visually distinct from previous Mario games. It doesn't look like anything we've seen before. This is what the first 2D HD Mario game should have been. Something visually unique and spectacular to show off the artistic ability of the dev team, as well as the capabilities of the hardware it's running on. I think the decision to leave the Mushroom Kingdom is what gave the devs the creative freedom to make new and interesting designs, as well as new mechanics. Well, the snowy mountains in the Mushroom Kingdom look this way, so if we want to do something that way, we have to make sure that it's in another kingdom, because it wouldn't make sense that the land changed up so radically. I like this. It's a good excuse to try entirely new things. The divergence into freedom to try new things is everywhere in the theming of this game. I like that World 2 is a snow and cloud theme. It takes the traditional Mario themes and combines them with a twist. However, it's not the first time we've seen two world themes combined into one. New Super Mario Bros. 2 did this with its water and jungle worlds, as well as the mountain and the clouds worlds, which I think is pretty neat. Mario Wonder, however, is unique. It's not the two basic-ass Mario themes jammed together, it's a fresh spin on these new themes instead. They're different enough that I think it's actually new. Like I said, it isn't a simple smashing of already established environments, something actually new in a Mario game, something thematically new at that. World 3 is this really interesting cubic waterfall themed world. It's all sorts of bizarre and interesting to look at. World 5 is a swamp-like world that is just so terrific. However, even within the worlds themselves, we get to see a wide range of ideas at play. One level in the Petal Isles can look like this generic-ass water level, while another can be, well, whatever the fuck this is. And I think that's great. I don't know how to properly describe this level thematically, and I love that. Like, food? Maybe? It kind of looks food-themed, but it's so strange and different from anything we've seen in a Mario game. It's just downright delightful. Hell, this trend can be seen at the beginning of World 1. Yes, the first couple levels are pretty basic, grassy-esque levels, but suddenly we're hit with this autumn forest vibe and this sort of underground, dank environment level. There is a ton here in the way of variety, and I think Mario Wonder is probably the most visually stunning 2D Mario game yet. You would hope that every new game is more visually interesting, but hey, not all of them can be winners. I don't think it's exactly a hot take to say that Mario Wonder is probably the best 2D looking Mario game yet. It just gets a lot right in the visual department. For example, even though World 4 has a basic-ass desert theme, there's still a lot of unique charm throughout, taking on a more white sand as opposed to the traditional tannish yellow color that we're all accustomed to in Mario games. Beyond the visual department, Super Mario Bros. Wonder shakes things up in almost every single way, down to even the basic mechanics of Mario. Let's start off with the simple stuff, if you will. Playable characters. The sheer amount of characters on display here is amazing. You can play as the standard Mario, Luigi, Yellow, and Blue Toad, stuff we're pretty used to by now, but you can also play as Peach, Toadette, Daisy, along with 4 other colored Yoshis and Nabbit. These are all fantastic choices for playable characters. There's only ever 4 max players in local multiplayer, so having 7 options means more options for everyone to choose from. Nobody is forced to play as a certain character. I call these characters the main cast because they represent a traditional way to play the game. The remaining 5 characters, the Yoshis and Nabbit, are the easy mode of Mario Wonder. They can't take any damage from enemies, but they also don't use any power-ups. Additionally, other players can ride the Yoshis. I think all these character options not only break away from the traditional mold of Mario, Luigi, and 2 random-ass toads, but also give players a ton of variety, really allowing them to feel right at home with their preferred choice of character. I, of course, spent most of my time playing as Luigi. I had to. However, I did try out the Yoshis and Nabbit just to get a feel of how they play, and it's pretty fun. The lack of power-ups does make things a little more stale and less challenging, but I can see why it's a good option for younger or newer players. Shout out to my girlfriend who is not great at Mario, but she's trying her best. This massive character roster is refreshing. It's the biggest playable character roster I think I've seen in any Mario game, other than like Mario Kart, which that doesn't count. 12 playable characters is pretty insane compared to New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe having a total of 5. One downside of this system is that there are no Yoshis in levels themselves. I think Super Mario World had the best version of Yoshi, the different colors and the different power-ups and the ability to take them into most levels. Just no other game has come close to beating Super Mario World with Yoshis. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any Mario Wonder Yoshi DLC, but it's a loss that I'm okay with considering the other new content this game has to offer. The story here is, well, generic Mario, but it does follow the newly established trend of switching things up and breaking tradition. Instead of Bowser kidnapping Peach, it seems he just fancied taking over Peach's castle so much in Mario U that he's just decided to become a castle in this game. Me too, buddy. Me too. I do think the Bowser castle looks a little silly. However, the overall presentation is pretty cool and cartoonishly evil enough for kids to enjoy. Bowser is a bad guy at a kid's game. I don't expect him to be some super terrifying villain with deep and poetic motivations. He just needs to be a goofy-ass villain doing some cartoonishly evil shit. But beyond the themes in this story, Mario Wonder diverts from the typical mechanical characteristics of Mario games on a fundamental and deep level. The biggest and most obvious example is the exclusion of the timer and the scoreboard. This isn't the first 2D game to not have a timer or a score, but it is the first one since the 1980s with Super Mario Bros. 2, unless I'm wrong again, in which case someone will correct me. These things are relics of the arcade days, and while it's fun to see how just high of a score you could get, I think Nintendo realized that nobody really cares about scores and timers. That's not why you come to Mario games. I find this change interesting because the last 2D Mario game, Super Luigi U, heavily utilized the timer in its mechanics. Each level had to be beaten in 100 seconds, meaning that each level was more stressful, faster paced. You didn't really have time to screw around or explore. Mario Wonder instead allows you to take as much time as needed. The devs realized that you can make platforming challenges fun and exciting without a timer, and I think that's great. On the one hand, one could argue that not having a timer kills a lot of the challenge of Mario Wonder, but to be honest, Mario Wonder kills a lot of the challenge by the nature of its platforming. It's a pretty easy Mario game. Normally I complain about something like this, but in this case, it just makes sense. The Switch is a really hot console right now, and as such, there are a lot of kids that play on it. I think making the game fairly easy is perfectly fine. If you want hard Mario levels, there's always Mario Maker 2 or The Lost Levels. There are places you can go for that kind of thing. That being said, I do hope we get like a Mario Maker 3 with a Mario Wonder theme. I think the community would take a ton of features from this game and push them to the absolute extremes. All it is to say is that Mario Wonder doesn't really need to be a difficult game. Yes, it has some difficult moments. For example, the very final level of the game gave me some trouble. Like, I lost like 30 lives, but after that point, I beat it pretty quickly. Other levels had me at a couple points, but nothing really had me worrying about a game over. Something Mario Wonder did keep from the old games is the power-ups. Mario Wonder brings back 3 power-ups from past Mario games, the Super Mushroom, the Fire Flower, and the Invincibility Star. Outside of these, the power-ups are entirely new, which is really refreshing. There is no Ice Flower or Propeller Mushroom, just all new stuff. And I'd like to take a moment to go through these power-ups and talk about what makes them great or not so great. Firstly, the Elephant Fruit. This is the one we've seen plastered all over promotional material for the game. Picking up one of these fruits turns your characters into elephant versions of themselves. In this form, Mario's fat ass can't fit through pipes as easily, but more importantly, he can hit enemies with his truck. He's a Cybertruck. But more importantly, he can hit enemies with his trunk or store water in it to give it to flowers. Mario is also just physically stronger in this form. He can move larger objects with ease and simply terrifies Goombas with his presence. Speaking of which, Mario Wonder has never really made me feel so guilty about stomping on Goombas. You can see the fear in their cute little eyes as a literal fucking elephant smashes them where they're about to be munched on. Overall, this power-up is pretty good. It definitely fits that wacky theme and new ideas that this game is so centered around, and I think it's great. Moving on, we have the Drill Mushroom. This one is very reminiscent of that drill power-up in Mario Galaxy 2, however this time it's built into Mario's hat. With this, Mario can take out enemies above him or climb into walls in any given level. He can also break objects in this form, allowing for some fun level design. Overall, I think this is the weakest of the new power-ups. It feels very situational. It's less of a power-up and more of a tool that is only really helpful to get through certain levels. In most Mario games, power-ups are meant to be these things that power up your gameplay, not really a tool to get through certain platforming challenges. And yes, I know the 3D games tend to beg a differ, but I said most games, okay? I just don't think the drill power-up is very useful outside of the levels that it's required in. That's not to say it's a bad power-up, it's thematically fun and serves as a sort of callback to Galaxy 2, which I appreciate. However, it's just not really my thing. Finally, we get to my personal favorite power-up, the Bubble Flower. I see a lot of people saying this is the weakest of the new power-ups, but I think those people underestimate its power. The ability to shoot bubbles through walls and kill enemies is enough to make it stronger than the Fire Flower. Additionally, it can take out enemies that the Fire Flower just can't take out. Couple this with the fact that the bubbles it shoots can be used as platforms for Mario to jump on, and you have yourself a really strong and versatile power-up. All of this, plus Mario's admittedly cutesy pink outfit, makes it my favorite power-up of the game, and it's so fun to use. Overall, I think the new power-ups in the game are really strong features and a bunch of fun. They add a ton to each level, but beyond power-ups, the game introduces badges. These badges radically change how levels are played and are probably one of the best things Mario Wonder adds to the Mario franchise. Badges are abilities that the player can use by selecting one at the start of a level or after death. There are a total of 24 badges in Mario Wonder. Each one does something a little bit different. Some of these are as simple as adding extra blocks and gaps to make some jumps easier, or as wacky and interesting as making Mario entirely invisible to both enemies and the player. Invisibility may seem like overkill, but the challenge of making jumps when you can't see yourself is very frustrating sometimes, but very, very rewarding. Most of the other badges offer things to help the player or some wacky new mechanic that changes up levels. There is a certain genius to these badges mechanically that I don't think should be overlooked. Let's start with the first badge players will receive, the Parachute Cap. This badge essentially turns Mario's hat into a parachute that allows the player to glide down slower. It doesn't add any sort of vertical height, but it does allow for greater horizontal distance to be traveled while in air. This slower descent also allows newer players to more easily pilot their character while falling. What could have been a really tight jump is made into an easy, sweet glide down to the bottom. This is a really great option for a first badge. It's simple to use and it's simple to understand, giving new players something to help them out a bit. Aesthetically, I think it's just fun, and Mario's hat gets all puffed up in a cute way. Other badges are less useful and almost feel like a kind of joke. The Spring Feet badge makes Mario jump around almost uncontrollably. This doesn't make the game any easier, but rather serves as a challenge for players who are more experienced and want to try something new. What Mario Wonder may lack in difficult, challenging stages, it makes up for with unique and difficult badges. That's not a total one-to-one replacement if you ask me, but it's something to help us, veteran players have something new to tinker with. Like I stated earlier, I think badges are maybe the single best thing to come out of Mario Wonder. I think they should stick around for another game or two. They add a ton. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to see them overused, but they just have so much potential. I hate to see such a creative and fun mechanic thrown away after one game. Alongside badges come badge challenge stages. These first serve as little tutorials for your new fancy badge, but later on serve as extra challenges with a particular badge. These stages are entirely optional, but I think you're seriously missing out on some content if you're only playing the main stages. My personal favorite of these stages is the wall climb jump stages. The ability isn't one that I use too often, but Nintendo did come up with some really fun, clever ways to use this badge, which I think is cool. But what is my favorite badge? Which badge do I think is the best? I think it's gotta be the boosting spin badge. I don't know what else you'd expect, it's by far the most useful badge in the game. While jumping, players can press the R button to get a nice little spin for some extra height, or to turn the jump around in the opposite direction. This essentially gives Mario the ability to do like a double jump or like a 1.5 jumps. It offers both an increase in vertical and horizontal movement, depending on the situation the player may find themselves in. I don't think any other badge comes close to this one in terms of versatility and utility. To tie up this little section on badges, I want to say that I don't think there's a single bad badge to the game. There are some that I don't personally find useful, but I think every badge can be used by someone in an interesting or fun way. It just gives players more freedom in a Mario game that is already seemingly striving out for greater player autonomy. Mario Wonder takes a different approach to player freedom than most previous 2D Mario games. At many points, the player is allowed to free roam across the world map, similar to Super Mario 3D World. Honestly, I wouldn't really be shocked if some of the game's code was just ripped right out over there and copied into the other. There are sections in Mario Wonder where players are allowed to do stages in whatever order they wish. World 5 opens with a section of non-linear courses. I think World 4 does too. You can pick whichever ones you want and then just go at them. I think this is a really nice change of pace. This is another one of those moves that redefines how Mario games are played. Sure, in other games, you may have a couple branching paths that allow you to go to a couple different courses instead of just the one, but I don't think there's been a 2D Mario game that just lets you pick from a list of multiple courses and tackle them in any order you wish, or even choose to ignore some. That level of freedom in an otherwise linear experience adds a lot. And there's a lot of variety in these levels. You have your main stages, sure, but there's little shops that you can go to. There's these little puzzle stages that I swear to God are the death of me. And there's badge challenges like I mentioned earlier. There's a really clever balance here between player freedom and restriction with Mario Wonder. Now, I'm about to make a comparison that I realize is going to make no sense to anybody out there, but I honestly think that the Zelda team could learn from Mario Wonder. I have many issues with Tears of the Kingdom. In fact, I've made a video about that about a year ago. I still think it's a great game, but in essence, I think there were some points in the game that players were given a little too much freedom. There's an old saying for game devs that goes, players will optimize the fun out of your game if you let them. And I think Tears of the Kingdom in some ways falls into that trap, but perhaps that's for another video. Or you can just go watch the old one, whatever you want to do. Mario Wonder found that balance between player freedom and restriction. Sure, you could do some levels out of order, but not all of them. You'll still need to go through a sequence of events and certain things to get badges or like the Royal Wonder Seeds. I think this nice balance is what makes for such an awesome experience overall. In terms of a 2D Mario game, this is probably the most freeing of any. You can do entire worlds out of order. You can do sections of worlds in whatever order you please, but the game isn't afraid to pull you back in and say, okay, if you want this thing, then you need to beat this challenge that we have set up for you. I haven't had enough time with the game yet to see if there are any real game-breaking badges or abilities, but I can imagine there are a couple badges that some pro has really pulled out and broken the game with. But I have yet to talk about Mario Wonder's single defining feature. That one thing that takes Mario Wonder from being a simply interesting new Mario game to a truly incredible one. I hope you know I could have made a pun here, but I chose not to. You're welcome. Let's talk about Wonder Flowers and Wonder Seeds. These are the main crux of the game. At the end of each level, the player will almost always get a Wonder Seed from a poplin at the house at the flagpole. This is just a nice basic reward for completing the stage. This ensures that new players can always progress. You see, in each level there is a Wonder Flower. These flowers do all sorts of wacky and incredible things to a given level. Some make Mario turn into a Goomba, others turn off gravity. There's just so much variety here. I never knew what to expect. You could be going through a cool cave in Mario Wonder only to have the level switched up entirely because of this single mechanic. In that sense, you rarely have an idea of what each level is going to bring for you. You could just be floating your way through space, or you could be a cube. There are just tons of ideas at play here, and it's really fun. These Wonder Flowers are technically an extra challenge for levels, however it is possible to go through the game without getting your hands on a lot of them. You have the option to avoid most of them if it really isn't your thing. That being said, you're not going to get every badge or every course beaten if you can't find every Wonder Flower and every Wonder Seed. Some Wonder effects are really fun, but I'll be honest, there are a few that just kind of suck. Like, I understand that this is a game made for kids, and I'm a 23-year-old adult overthinking and applying stupidly complex meaning to a silly video game, but this one kind of just fucking sucks. In terms of hitting or missing, as the kids would say, I'd say like 9 out of 10 of these Wonder effects are a hit, but every once in a while Nintendo just hits you with some bullshit. For example, Mario turning to a Goomba was fun for like 5 minutes. As soon as I realized the Special World had another level where I had to play as a Goomba again, I loathed playing that level. I understand that the fun of this is the challenge of being a slow-moving and non-jumping creature, but I think I just found it really boring after the first time I did it. For the most part, though, I found the Wonder effects to be genuinely fun and unique. For every slow-ass Goomba level or stupid hippo bouncing level, there were like 10 more unique and interesting Wonder effects to make up for it. And hey, while those effects may not be for me, you might find those Goomba levels fun. There's a Wonder Flower for everyone. Did that rhyme? Did I just make a rhyme? I think I just rhymed that. That's what Mario Wonder does best. It comes up with new ideas that try to include as many different types of players as possible. Everything from new enemies to new power-ups or new playable characters, Mario Wonder has all of it. It's an exciting and fun adventure that I think any Mario fan, hell, any gaming fan should try. And that's Mario Wonder. Sure, I could talk about boss fights being boring or complain about some other Wonder effects, but I really want to tie this trilogy together. Throughout this trilogy, I've underpinned the importance of art and expression and the different ways that corporations can tie artists down if they aren't careful. I think Mario Wonder is a return to form. In the 1980s, the teams developing Mario games were much smaller and much closer with smaller budgets. They had more freedom to do what they wanted because the higher-ups understood the importance of letting artists create. What's my basis for this claim? Nothing, I made it the fuck up. Anyway, looking at New Super Mario Bros. As a series shows a clear restriction on creative freedom from the devs. The devs weren't allowed to push the creative envelope. Mario games are cute. They have a generic, bland style that is so easy for normies to get into. Mario needs to be something that everyone can enjoy. It seems to me that Mario Wonder signals a return to the realization that creativity and unique charm of Mario games is what brings people in. Each of the original Super Mario Bros. Games had their own creative and unique identities and mechanics. Mario 1 was the introduction, Mario 2 was the wacky sequel, Mario 3 was the return to form with massive expansion and improvements, and Mario World was the ultimate apex of what Mario could be. The new Super Mario Bros. Games kind of killed any innovation and creativity. What was once a fairly consistent trend of trying new things and never really repeating themselves in the same way had become the antithesis of what made Mario games so popular to begin with. That is to say, it was bland, boring, and repetitive. Mario games were always about the variety, and always about how each game felt different to play. At its core, Mario was about running and jumping, sure, but you cannot deny that the success of the first few Mario games was due to their creativity and novelty. That all stopped with the new Super Mario Bros. Series. While that series did bring some massive innovations with the first game, with Mario's movement and star coins, and simultaneous co-op with the Wii game, that was about it. They didn't really innovate as much as the previous games did. If you watch my Mario U video, you'll know that I get the sense that the new Super Series was played with the developers who wanted to do more, but the executives just wouldn't allow it. A similar thing happened with the Paper Mario series. The games went from being creative and unique and having cool and interesting characters to just standard Mario guys with little to no unique traits. Most Paper Mario fans consider the first two games as being the best, with Super Paper Mario being a decent follow-up, but everything after that game is kind of just not what the games used to be. And I think the new Super Mario Bros. Series kind of follows a similar trend. Generally, the first two games are considered okay by fans, but the other two are just generic and repetitive. Mario Wonder feels like a release of the creative restrictions the higher-ups at Nintendo had so tightly enforced. It seems to me like a response to the failures of the Wii U. The same generic styles won't work anymore. You can't rely on the same art style to sell a game. Sure, you can repackage it and sell it to a new audience that maybe didn't get a chance to, like they did with the deluxe version, but that pales in comparison to a fresh, new Mario experience. And that's what Mario Wonder is, a fresh, new experience. Since Breath of the Wild, several Nintendo franchises have gone through this rebirth stage. 2D Metroid came back, Pikmin finally got a new game, Mario's 3D games went back to their roots, and here with Mario Wonder, 2D Mario was shaken up to its core. One tiny detail that really sells me on this whole thing is the talking flowers. They're just so interesting. They fit weirdly well into Mario, but are totally unique in their execution. They're expressive, they're funny, they're memorable. These guys are at every level and add a ton to the game. I do like that Nintendo gives you the option to turn off their dialogue if it's just annoying to you or just feels so unnatural to have so much voice acting in a Mario game. Regardless, if there was any tiny detail to cement the importance of this Mario game, it's these tiny little fellas. They might just be my favorite thing about Mario Wonder. This all ties back to that question I posed at the beginning of this trilogy over a month ago. Do video games need to change? Does art need to change? I think the usage of need is a bit strong in that question. It pushes the idea that change is either something good or bad, necessary or unnecessary, when in reality, change simply is. Change exists. Nothing will stay the same forever. This has always been the case for everything in the universe. While it is simple for us to imagine ourselves as the end result of history and time, the reality is that we are not the result of thousands of years of history. We are a single part of an ever-evolving history. In the same way that you and I are pieces of an ongoing cosmic phenomenon, so too is art. It changes and evolves. 100 years ago, games were mostly sports, cards games, or shit like chess. Since the 1970s, digital games have taken off. How we play those games has evolved too. Every once in a while, there are turning points in gaming. times when a game comes out that radically shifts the gaming landscape. In 1985, it was Super Mario Bros. In 1996, it was Super Mario 64. In 1998, it was Ocarina of Time. In 2007, it might have been Call of Duty 4 or Modern Warfare. In 2017, it was Breath of the Wild and the countless other games in between. I don't think Mario Wonder quite reaches that level of shifting the gaming landscape forever. However, I do think it represents a shift in Nintendo in the future of Mario games to come. I'm very excited to see what art Nintendo comes up with next. 2024 has been a pretty dry year for them so far. It makes me excited to see what they've got coming. I'd love to see a new 3D Mario game on a console with much better specs than the Switch. For now, I ask you this. What about Mario Wonder makes it such an incredible piece of art? For me, it's the little details, the animations, the music, the talking flowers, and all the things that we sometimes take for granted in games. My favorite part about overthinking video games is finding the smallest details and thinking about how someone took the time to make it. Whether it be a tiny texture on a background object or a subtle animation an enemy does in time with the music, I just love seeing it. It's some of my favorite things to look at in a game. So, what do you think of Mario Wonder? Is it the big new revolution of Mario, or is it just another simple step forward? I'll leave it to you guys in the comments. For now, I suppose I'll go back to playing silly block game and coming up with new ideas for videos. To end this series, I'd just like to say that even though these videos have done pretty poorly in terms of views, every comment left on them has been really encouraging and really kind. I know I've expressed frustration in the past with how it can sometimes feel like my art isn't as valuable if fewer people watch it, but if you're here listening to this, then that means you care about my content quite a bit. Or you got roped into watching a Mario video and sucked into a discussion about philosophy and art, in which case, I'm not sorry. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Seriously, it means a ton to me. I know this video probably won't get a lot of views, but for those of you who do view it, I hope it's good. I hope you learned something new about Mario games, or found some appreciation for art that you didn't realize that you had. Whatever it is, I hope you got something out of this video and out of this trilogy. As always, you should like and subscribe. Consider becoming a member as it helps me get a more stable income each month. You also get early access to videos, live stream VODs, and your name at the end of my videos. YouTube revenue can be very up or down with no real way of knowing what next month is going to keep you afloat or not. So becoming a member helps me a ton in that regard. Regardless, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye bye!